It's our honor and pleasure to welcome you, Dr. Табунда, in our university. Dear students and colleagues, Dr. Табунда is going to deliver a lecture on a look at the Philippines administrative system. He is a doctor of public administration, director of the ASEAN Center, dean of the School of International Relations, New Era University. Is that right?
Yeah.
The topic of the lecture you are going to read today has evoked really vivid interest among the students, and many of them have come today to listen to it. The floor is yours. We are eager to listen to it.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be here. But actually, I'm not expecting this lecture anymore. But Dr. Alex really insisted that I should deliver a talk here. Because your rector, Dr. Fipieski, we asked him to deliver a talk when he visited our university in Manila last April. Was that April? Last February this year. So your university rector has actually visited New Era University, and we asked him to discuss about the metropolitan governance system here in Moscow. So, in return, I'm here. At this time, I will make a quick discussion on how the Philippine administrative system works. Okay, my field is actually public administration. So, my academic background and also my professional background is really with the Philippine government. So allow me to make a short discussion on how the Philippine administrative system works. But please tell me if you think I am talking too fast, because I tend to talk fast.
It's quite moderate, thank you.
Okay, so we begin our discussion here. So the Philippine administrative system, we call it PAS. PAS refers to all the organizations within the Philippine government system. Okay, so, can you see it from here?
If you let us, we will save the chart and probably distribute with the students later.
Okay. It says here there are 3 branches of government in the Philippines. But before I discuss that, I have to tell you this. The Philippines had been a colony of Spain for more than 300 years, 365 years, and they left us in 1898. And as soon as they left us, it's part of our history, the Americans took over. So during that time, the United States was looking for a colony, and Spain was already a power in decline, and the Filipino revolutionaries were really able to drive away the Spaniards. But unfortunately, Spain and the Philippines had an agreement that the United States of America would take over the Philippines. So our present form of government, the Philippine government, is really patterned after that of the United States of America. When they left us in 1946, they have already instituted a system of government that is similar to their system in the United States. So you can see from here, there are actually 3 branches of government in the Philippines that is really patterned after the United States. The first one is the executive branch. The executive branch of the government, that is the one headed by the president. We're supposed to be a democratic republic. Okay, that's more or less similar to the U.S. model. Democratic republic, but it is centralized. When you say centralized, the power is really centralized under the national government. Okay, so we have the executive branch. This is headed by the President of the Republic of the Philippines, and then you have the different departments, or in your case, the different ministries. Okay, and under the executive branch, you have the different departments, you have the different ministries, and then you have the local government units. Okay, we will discuss later what the levels of local government units are. The second branch of government, which is the legislative branch. This is the Congress. This is where laws and policies are discussed and passed. Okay? Just like the United States also, we have we call it houses. Two houses in our legislative branch. So our legislative branch, our Congress, that's equivalent to your Duma, right? We have two houses, or we have two chambers. The first one is the Senate, where the senators are elected nationally, in national scope. And you have the lower house, or the House of Representatives, where the congressmen are. Okay, so these are the two branches, these are the two houses, we call that houses or chambers under our legislative branch. Okay, can you still follow?
Yeah, we follow you,
okay.
Thank you, it's interesting.
And then the third branch is the judiciary. This is headed by the highest body in the judiciary is our Supreme Court. You have a Supreme Court here also, right?
Mm-hmm,
but what makes the Philippines different from many other countries, our judiciary is composed of different branches also. And one of them you will notice is that we have a court, because we have a court, we have the regular courts, but we also have a Sharia court. You're familiar with what a Sharia court is? This is the one followed by Muslims, okay? Because we have a Muslim population in southern Philippines. So the system that they follow is really consistent with their Islamic beliefs. So we have a Sharia court, okay? So that's, in short, is the three branches of the Philippine government. And then I will discuss to you in detail at least some of the specific functions of each of these different branches of government. Okay? Oh, we skip this one. Okay, that's the map of the Philippines. How many of you have been to the Philippines already?
None.
You know what? The reason I'm here is, of course, Dr. Alex knows this. I was invited by GIMO, Moscow State Institute of International Relations University, to deliver a series of lectures, actually 8 lectures, because they have a master's in political economy of Southeast Asia, and they took me in as their first international lecturer, so I am here. So my students there are master's students coming from, most of them are Russians, actually, and some of them are from the ASEAN member states. ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. You're familiar with that?
Sure.
Of course. We have students coming from Malaysia, Vietnam, Singapore, and Indonesia. Okay, and then hopefully by next year we will have a complete set of students coming from the ASEAN member states. Anyway, during the course of my 8 lectures there, what I noticed is that there's very little knowledge, there's very little awareness on the Philippines. That's why I am happy when Dr. Alex told me perhaps you can discuss the Philippine government system with our students here, because there's very little knowledge on the Philippines, and we're actually very happy to share with you. Okay, in the New Era University, we have a Russian Studies Center. We have the only very actively functioning Russian Studies Center. We teach the Russian language, we teach Russian history, and with Moscow State, McGill, and Moscow State University, we have various joint projects together. And perhaps if we sign a memorandum of understanding between your university and New Era University, you can actually, even without that, we can actually join hands in common projects. One of the highlights of our engagement, of our cooperation with Moscow State University, you know what? Last January, 3 students from Moscow State University, they spent their internship in the Philippines. So perhaps if you can later, if anybody of you is interested, the New Era University is willing to host internships before you graduate from your course. For example, if you're interested in how the Philippine government system works, we can gladly host you in the New Era University. Okay, so sorry. Okay, I'll skip this. I'll skip this one. Okay, we go back to the three branches of government. Okay, first we have the executive branch. Okay, we are a presidential republic, which means we have no queen or we have no king. The head of the government and the head of the state, I hope you know the difference. The head of government is the one who actually manages the day-to-day affairs of the government. The head of the state is actually a symbolic head of state. For example, Great Britain, you have the head of state is the monarch, the king, and the head of the government is the prime minister. But in the Philippines, we have just one. The head of the state and the head of the government is the president. He is the highest elected official of the country. So he heads the cabinet, the different departments or the different ministries. And then, of course, with the president is the vice president. Okay? One thing unique about the Philippine government system, and sometimes we feel it's not really helpful to our government affairs. In many countries, of course, the president and the vice president are elected by the people. But in many countries, for example, in the United States, the president and the vice president belong to the same party. Okay? But lo and behold, in the Philippines, no. Ever since our 1987 Constitution was ratified, it says there that the president and the vice president can come from different parties. And the result is not really very good for the Philippines, because if you have a vice president, if you have a president and a vice president who are quarreling, who do not see eye to eye, who do not agree on policies, then you have a problem. Because government, for example, the government run by a president should be running very smoothly. But in cases when the opposition comes from the vice president, then that's not good. Okay? You don't have that problem here in Russia.
No, not here.
It's only in the Philippines. So, for example, under the previous administration, Rodrigo Duterte, he visited Moscow in 2019. I hope you're familiar with that. You're aware of that. Actually, he went to MGIMO to deliver a talk. So when he was president, the vice president, who is a woman, Leonor Bredo, belongs to the opposition. So you could just imagine there are some policies that are stated or implemented by the office of the president, which the vice president does not necessarily agree with. And that's not healthy. Of course, that's part of democratic system, but in practical application, that is not healthy. Because when you are running a government, I mean, all your people should be with you. They should agree with your policies. Okay? So we have the president, the vice president, and you have the cabinet. The cabinet members or the heads of the different departments or ministries are appointed by the president. Okay? But before they can really be officially designated as secretary, we call them secretaries. It's equivalent to your ministers. They have to undergo hearing under the legislative branch. We have a commission on appointments, which is screen the appointment of cabinet secretaries or ministers. The commission on appointments is under the legislative branch of the government. So we have a second branch, which is, they say, a co-equal branch, which means the power of the executive is different from the power of the legislative. So we have a Senate, which is, in the Philippines, we have 24 senators. They are elected nationally. Okay, so they campaign, they do a nationwide campaign. So we have 24 senators. That's the upper house. That's equivalent to that's similar to the United States system. They have a Senate also. And we have a lower house, or the House of Representatives. These are composed of about 240, more than 200 congressmen. Okay? They are all elected. Okay? But there are two kinds of congressmen. The first one, these are the congressmen who are elected per district, electoral district. For example, in Manila, the city of Manila, I think they have 6 districts. So 6 congressmen are elected there. So these are the district representatives, we call the district congressmen. There's another kind of congressmen who are also elected. We call them the party list congressmen. These are the congressmen who are elected because they represent party lists, parties that advocate certain, certain interests, certain advocacies. For example, there's a party list for jeepney drivers. There's a party list for example, athletes. There's a party list for the different geographical regions in the Philippines. So they are also elected simultaneous with the election of the congressmen coming from the districts. Okay? So how do we make a law? How do you pass a law? So a bill, before a law becomes a law, there should be a bill first to be discussed in the Congress. A bill is passed in the House of Representatives, and a similar bill is also passed in the Senate, in the upper house, before they can come up with a what do they call this? A common bill. Okay, that's finally they will come up with the final draft of the bill before it is passed on to the President of the Philippines for his signature. And once the President of the Philippines signed the bill that is discussed at the Senate and at the lower house, that's the time when it becomes a law. Okay? Unless, in some cases, the President will not sign the passed bill. But I think after 30 days, if the President does not do anything with that, it will automatically become a law. Okay, so that's how laws are passed in the Philippines. Okay? Okay, and then the third branch, as I told you earlier, is the judicial branch. This is also they said it is a co-equal branch. So these are, the highest, of course, is the Supreme Court. What's the equivalent of that here in Russia? Same. Okay, Supreme Court. And then after the Supreme Court, below the Supreme Courts are the different trial courts. You have the regional trial courts. You have the metropolitan trial courts. And of course, the Court of Appeals. Okay, and you have the special courts. Special courts, for example, we have a tax court. Tax appeals court. So if you're not satisfied with the assessment of your tax, you can always go to the tax courts. And then, as I said earlier, we have a Sharia court. Sharia. This is a court that hears cases involving Muslims. Okay? And in another portion of the Philippines also, we also have another special court which deals with cases involving indigenous peoples. So indigenous peoples' court, they apply laws that are accepted by traditional indigenous peoples. Okay, so that's a sign of respect. We respect your religion. You are Muslims. You are both Muslims. So we try your court in a Muslim court. You both belong to an indigenous peoples group. So we hear your cases in an indigenous peoples court. But what if there's a Muslim and for example, a Christian? The case is heard in the traditional court, the one under the Supreme Court. Okay, so that's how we do it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we respect the different religious beliefs and traditions in the Philippines. That's why we establish special courts for those cases. Are you still following me? I hope I'm not making you bored and sleepy. In the Philippines, after lunch, we call it the tiempo del peligro. Tiempo de peligro. That's actually a Spanish term. Time of peril. What's a time of peril? Oh, after lunch, especially if you have a very heavy lunch, it's not a good time to listen to lectures because you will fall asleep. So we are actually in a tiempo del peligro, okay? Sometimes when we have audiences like this, we have intermission numbers. We ask some of the members of the audience to sing or dance.
I'm sure everyone is still alert because you are speaking really interesting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Especially about tribunals.
Yes, yeah. Okay, so that's it. We have a special course, we have special tribunals depending, which respect the traditions, which respect the religions of our people. Okay? So, where am I now? Okay. So, we have the different departments. Anyway, we go back to the executive branch. So we have the different departments. I think we have more than 20 departments now. So we have the Department of Education, the Department of National Defense, the Department of Foreign Affairs, of course, Department of Labor, what else? Department of Health, the usual. I think you have equivalent here in Russia. But there are some departments, for example, we have a new department, Department of Housing and Urban Development. So it concerns housing. Of course, we have the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. We have actually a new department, the Department of Migrant Workers. It is a recognition that the Philippines, we have a diaspora, which means we send people outside to work. We're not a rich country, definitely. So many of our population do not find suitable work inside the Philippines. So many of them, for decades already, they go out of the Philippines to work, okay? And they have special interests, they have special problems, especially in their places of work. That's why we have established a separate department that attends to their needs, okay? In Russia, we have 10,000 Filipinos working here.
Impressive.
Yeah, not really much, because, for example, in Saudi Arabia, there's this ongoing, but this is true. In Saudi Arabia, if you remove all the Filipinos there, the Saudi Arabia economy and society will collapse. You're familiar, of course, with the history of Saudi Arabia. During the 70s, oil embargo, when the Saudi Arabia and many of Middle East countries refused to sell oil to the United States because of their and other European countries because of their support to the Yom Kippur War between Israel and the Muslim countries surrounding Israel. So they embarked on an oil embargo, which means they refused to sell oil to the Western countries, and if there's no oil in Western countries, the Western countries will collapse. So, as a result of that, oil prices became high, and that's the start of the riches of the Middle East nations. So they have all this money, they're awash with cash. What are they going to do with that? They build roads, they build bridges, they build buildings. So they hired engineers, construction workers, etc., etc. And the majority of them come from the Philippines. And even if the infrastructures are already there, Filipinos still remain in Saudi Arabia, working as engineers, still construction workers, and some of them are in domestic household sector. That's why if you remove all the Filipinos in Saudi Arabia and even Middle East, United Arab Emirates, those countries will collapse. So that's it. So what am I? I'm talking about the Department of Migrant Workers. So that is a recognition that Filipinos are everywhere in the world. In fact, our population now is about 117 million. More than 2 million are, 10% of our population are working outside the Philippines. That is apart from, for example, because the country closest to the Philippines in terms of politics and culture is the United States. In the United States alone, we have anywhere from, I think, 3 to 4 million Filipinos. And of course, many of them are already American citizens, so we don't really count them in the 2 million who are outside the Philippines. The remittances, the money that the workers remit to the Philippines are actually what keeps our economy floating. More than about 10% actually of our gross domestic product or GDP comes from the remittances of the overseas Filipino workers. And of the 2 million something, 10,000, which is really a small number, are here in Russia. Majority in Moscow and in St. Petersburg. Actually, New Era University, we just presented the result of our first survey with MGIMO, where we studied the conditions of Filipino workers here in Russia. You know what? Are you interested to know the findings?
Tell us.
Hello.
Tell us. We're all intrigued.
Okay. The finding was they find working here, at least in the domestic sector, very ideal. Because, tell me if this is true, they find no discrimination among Russian employers. They're not being discriminated upon, unlike in Saudi Arabia, for example, or in China.
Which is pleasant, of course.
Yeah.
Still, the weather can't compete.
Yeah. And what else? The pay is higher compared to, for example, China and the Middle East. Why do I say China and the Middle East, for example, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and Kuwait? Because there's too much discrimination in those countries. Those countries became rich overnight without the proper education of its. I'm sorry to say this. This is recorded. This unlike Russians who are, you're basically much more educated. That's why there is no discrimination. This is the real human rights respect, respect for human rights. Okay, so that's it. So where am I now? So we have the different. And then apart from the different departments or ministries, we have constitutional bodies. These are agencies that are written in our constitution that there should be these 3 constitutional bodies. The first one is the Civil Service Commission. You say have something like that here, right? This is the Human Resource Department of the government, right? So all matters pertaining to government workers are here in the Civil Service Commission. So that's one. The second one is the Commission on Audit. You have something like that also, how government expenditures are being spent. So there's an audit commission that looks into how government money is being spent. Okay, so we call that a constitutional body. And of course, we have a COMELEC, or the Commission on Elections. Actually, right now in the Philippines, October 30, we have an ongoing elections now, this day. They're electing the village officers. We call them the barangay officers. Barangay is a Filipino term for village, the smallest political unit in the Philippines. So today is the election of the barangay officers. So we have the chairman and we call them the councilmen of the barangay officers. Plus, we also have a governing system for the youth. So we call that Kabataang Barangay, or the youth village officers. So apart from the usual barangay officers, apart from the usual village officers, there's also ongoing now an election for the youth officers. We consider them as a distinct group. That's because they have different interests, they have different conditions from the rest of the population. That's why we have a separate set for the youth. Okay, we call that Kabataang Barangay. So right now, if you are a youth, a member of 15 to 30 years old, we consider that as youth. Here in Russia, what's the age limit for youth?
Probably this is the right question for the audience. Can you repeat it and check their knowledge?
Okay, yes.
Hello, dear professors. Thank you very much.
Yeah, there was a question from the lecturer. Can you answer it?
What is the age range of the youth here? When you say youth, how
Yeah.
old?
35 years.
35. So Filipinos are younger because our age limit is 30. So those from 15 to 30 are eligible to vote for their youth village officers. Okay. Yes, you have a question?
No, just additional question. I would like to ask about Philippine public diplomacy system, as far as I'm an associate professor of the law department here. And I would like to know, how would you compare at first how are doing the public diplomacy systems of Russia, of the US, of China, of India, and the Philippines, and also what are the actors of public diplomacy system of Philippines? So are there some think tanks, NGOs, or is it MPA responsible for it? And also at NGIMO, I'm part of the finals for foreign MA Students Commission, and I would like to tell that this year there were very bright Philippine students, hoping that with our university we would also launch such kind of projects. Or
Depends on... Actually, you should have attended my lecture that I'm giving, because that's one of my topics. Philippine foreign policy. Okay, you know what? We have a unique foreign policy because, among others, of course, the first foreign policy is peaceful settlement of, non-nuclear. We don't engage in wars. If you have problems with your neighboring countries, you engage in diplomacy. That's one. The second is what's the second one? Anyway, the first two are the usual foreign policy statements of most other countries. But the third one is unique, and my students at MGIMO were surprised, because the third foreign policy is the protection of overseas Filipino workers. It has become part of our culture. It has become part of our nationhood that Filipino workers really go outside for instance, lack of better economic opportunities in the Philippines. That's why they go outside the country. They work outside the country, and their interests has been enshrined in our Philippine foreign policy. So the third pillar of the Philippine foreign policy is the protection of overseas Filipino workers. And among others, we have the Department of Migrant Workers to really attend to that, to really see to it that the interests of Filipino migrant workers are protected. Okay? And then, of course, you should have really attended my lecture, because there I discuss Philippine-Russia relations, Philippine-US relations, what else? Philippine-China relations, because these are the three major powers that we are dealing with. But of course, among the three, China, US, Russia, the least engagement is with Russia, because of course, it's part of our history. We are seen, correct me if I'm wrong, we are seen by most Russians as a country that's really very, can I say the word controlled by the United States. So there's no much interest in Russia about the Philippines, because this is a country which is unfamiliar to us, because it has, very close ties with the US. In fact, there are 10 ASEAN member states. Okay? Of the 10 ASEAN member states, the most Western focused is the Philippines. We don't relate much with our ASEAN neighbors. For instance, if you ask an ordinary Filipino, they would know more about the places in the US than about the places in Southeast Asia. That's how US focus the Philippines has been throughout the decades, because we have so much influence coming from the United States. Okay, I saw this. I watched this TV program once. This is true. That's not a joke. For example, there is a stand-up comedian. You're familiar with the stand-up comedian. Are there stand-up comedians in Russia?
Sure, many.
Do you know how to laugh? Okay, that's one impression of Filipinos. Okay, Russians. These people do not know how to laugh. How can we be friends with them? See, the stand-up comedian said, okay, Filipinos are not really Asians. Because of we know so little about our Asian heritage. Then what are Filipinos? Oh, Filipinos are actually Mexicans who talk and act like Chinese. Why Mexicans? That's also true because that's part of our history. We were a colony of Spain for more than 300 years, actually 333 years. But we were not ruled from Spain because during those times there's no airplane yet, you know. Travel from Manila to Spain would take 6 months. So the Spanish king, the Spanish court, the Spanish crown appointed a viceroy in Mexico. So we were actually ruled from Mexico. That's why if you look at Filipinos, actually I lived in the States for some time. I'm always mistaken for are you Mexican? I'm always mistaken for Mexican. It's just that my nose is flat. So that's it. We have, especially in our culture, if you study Filipino culture, there's much similarity between Latin America, between Mexico and Philippine culture. We're both Catholics, basically Catholics, and our beliefs and value systems are almost always similar. Mexicans and Filipinos are fond of beauty contests, beauty pageants. That's why you have Mexicans and Filipinos winning Miss Universe, Miss International, because that's part of our national pastime. We love fiestas. You're familiar with fiestas?
Sure.
Yeah, that's Filipinos we especially during May when you go to the Philippines. Every day there will also be a fiesta somewhere. That's the fiesta month. So that's very Latin American. We got it from Mexico.
Mañana culture as well?
Yes, the mañana culture. Okay, we'll see later. We'll see tomorrow. Okay, that's it. That's very Latin American. That's what we got from the Mexican influence. It's just that we look and talk Chinese. Oh, Filipinos are actually Mexicans who talk and look like Chinese. Anyway, so where am I? We're in the commission and elections. I'm trying to crack jokes so you won't get sleepy. So commission and elections. And then there are also agencies that are constitutionally mandated, which means they're not that chair in the Constitution, but the government is mandated to establish them. So we have a Commission on Human Rights. We have that. We have a Commission on Human Rights. And Ombudsman. Ombudsman is the agency that hears cases of high government officials, involving high government officials. Okay, so the Ombudsman is different from the Civil Service Commission. Civil Service Commission, most of the time just hear cases on rank and file employees, the lower level government employees. But for the high level government employees, it's the government officials, it's the ombudsman that hear cases. Okay, why? Because, if you're high up there, your cases would be more severe. Your corruption, the gravity of the cases would be more severe. So they have an ombudsman to hopefully attend to that. And then, of course, you have the executive. We go back to the executive branch. You have this is the seal of the sagisag ng pangalawang Pangulo, the seal of the Vice President. So notice here, for both the Philippine President and the Vice President, of course, you have here the triangle. Inside the triangles, that's supposed to be a lion. There are 3 stars here, see, for both. The 3 stars signify the 3 major geographic divisions of the Philippines. Luzon, that's where Manila is. Visayas, that's where the beautiful beaches are. And Mindanao, that's the southern portion of the Philippines where most of the Muslim secessionist problem is concentrated. Okay? And most of Mindanao actually were not really part of the Philippines. When I say that, it's because during the Spanish and American regime, Mindanao was not really colonized. Because in Mindanao are where the sultanates of the Muslim sultanates are. And sultanates are basically sovereign states. Okay, but when the Philippines was created, when the Philippines was sold by Spain to the Americans, they included Mindanao in the sale. Okay, so it was a unjust move against Muslims. That's why we have this Muslim separatist movement, because of that. Among others, it started there. Okay, so you have the three major island groups, the three stars. These are also in our flag of the Philippines, and then you have 8 rays of the sun: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They signify the 8 provinces around Manila that rose up against the Spaniards during the Philippine Revolution against Spain. So the 8 provinces. And these 8 provinces are actually located around Manila, and these are all in the island of Luzon. Okay, so there. In the Philippines, basically, the vice president is a spare tire. You say spare tire, oh, just waiting for the president to get sick or die so that I can take over. That's it. But in many cases, the vice president holds a department post, a cabinet post, which means he or she will head one of the departments. Okay. That's a problem when so the problem now is, what if the president and the vice president do not belong to the same party? So we always had that problem. Initially, the vice president would be appointed to a cabinet post until sometime when he or she cannot anymore, accept what the president is saying. So the president will, you're fired from your cabinet. You're still a vice president, but you don't have any any portfolio. You don't have anything to do, but to wait until the president gets sick or die. This is the main hall of the Congress, the House of Representatives. There are about 240 something congressmen. Okay, and then the Senate, as I told you earlier, is just 24. It's located in a different building. Okay. And unfortunately for the Philippines, I'm a public administration educator. And when I do this discussion with my students, what is supposed to be the role of the legislative branch? Of course, what's the role? What are lawmakers supposed to do? If you're a lawmaker, what are you supposed to do? You draft the laws, right? That's it. But in the Philippines, they draft the law, okay, but they also manage projects. That's not supposed to be part of the legislative, but it's something to do with corruption. I won't discuss it here, but I hope you get the hint. They're involved in the projects. Why? You're supposed to be lawmakers. Why are you involved in project funding? Anyway. Well, we take that in an executive session, or if you invite me next time, I will discuss that. Okay, so of course we have the judicial branch. Okay, I keep on repeating. So these are the details. So we have a court of appeals. You have a Sandigan Bayan. Sandigan Bayan is the court that hears cases of government officials. Okay, that decides where the trials for government officials are conducted. The case will be filed with the ombudsman. That's the initial activities. And when they see that it needs to be, it's fit to be heard or for trial, the trial is with the Sandigan Bayan. Okay, so and then of course you have the Court of Appeals there, and then you have a Court of Tax Appeals here, and then under the appeals courts, you have the regional trial court, okay? You have the municipal trial courts, the city trial courts, and you also have, as I said earlier, the Sharia courts, okay? Hearing cases for Muslims, okay? It's not included here, but I told you earlier, there's a special court for indigenous peoples. Actually, it's not anymore drawn here, but because of we have a very small compared to the rest of the Philippines, we have a very small population of indigenous peoples. Okay, and many of the indigenous peoples are actually Muslims also. That's why many of the cases are heard in the Sharia courts. Okay, and then under the executive branch are the government-owned and controlled corporations. We call them GOCCs. Okay? government-owned corporations owned by the government. For example, under the Department of Energy, we have a Philippine National Oil Corporation, right? So, why do you need corporations? For example, I think is that similar here? Yes. There are corporations handled by the government. Yeah, Gazpro. It's a government corporation because corporations function differently from the usual government organizations, government agencies. There are certain rules, there are certain laws there are certain functions that could not be handled by the regular departments. So these are taken over by the corporations. For example, these are money-earning corporations. So traditionally, government agencies are not supposed to, to do investments or earn money. That's why they establish these government-owned and controlled corporations to handle specifically businesses. Okay. And then we also have, of course, we have some chartered institutions or special agencies that have special functions. For example, during the Cold War or until 1986, the two of the biggest military bases outside the United States mainland are in the Philippines. Subic Base and Clark Air Base. These are the two biggest military bases of America outside the American mainland, and they were established. They served as staging points during the Vietnam War. Okay, so when they were driven away by in 1987, they were driven. They stopped operating because the senators, among others, don't want these bases anymore. So these military bases were converted into business locations, tourist attractions. They became, for example, Subic became the Subic Bay. It became the Subic Bay Metropolitan, Subic Bay Development Authority. So they were transformed into business parks, tourist attractions. So those are what we call the chartered institutions. Okay, institutions created by law to perform specific functions, and of course, at the lowest portion, below the national government, the GOCCs, the government-owned and controlled corporations, and the chartered institutions, you can consider them as national level governments, and below them are we have now the local government units. Okay, so. Okay, and then we have a special, the discussion on local government units. But you know what? I'm trying to discuss to you what I teach in one term. When you say one term in the Philippines, it's 5 months. So we're trying to squeeze them in 1 hour. So we will discuss later the local government units. Okay, we have also special agencies. For example, the Metropolitan Manila Development Authority, the capital of the Philippines, is really under the administrative supervision of the Metropolitan Development Authority. It is composed of Manila, our capital, and 16 other local government units. Okay? We also have a National Anti-Poverty Commission. Do you have an equivalent here? You have an Anti-Poverty Commission here? No,
I don't think so.
Oh, you're rich. We have a National Youth Commission. See, we have a special agency for youth. You have a counterpart here. Okay, Council for the Welfare of Children. This is actually handled by our Department of Social Works and Development. We have a Office of Muslim Affairs. We have a National Commission on Indigenous Peoples. Okay, we have a National Nutrition Council, and you have specialized agencies. For example, Agno River Basin Development Commission. It was actually abolished already. We have special commissions. We have special agencies attending to specific geographical places. For example, in Manila, we have the Laguna Lake Development Authority, which is an agency that handles matters related to the biggest lake in the Philippines, which is beside Metro Manila, the Laguna Lake. So you have all these different special agencies created. These are all under the national government. Okay, they are answerable to the office of the president. Okay, or to the department that they are assigned in. For example, the Council of the Welfare of the Children is under the Department of Social Work and Development. We have an Office of Workers Welfare Administration that is under the Migrant Department of Migrant Workers. Okay? Aha, so we have the local government units now. Aha. Do I have a... oh, sorry. I don't have a... I don't have a suitable... I don't have a suitable...
Slide for something?
slide.
Yeah.
It's in my other presentation. So you have the national government, okay, and then below the national government, we're talking here of the local government units. We actually have a autonomous region. Autonomous region, which means there's a certain territory in the Philippines that has more power compared to the other local government units. It's the autonomous region of Muslim Mindanao. We call it now the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao. It was created as a result of the different negotiations between the Philippine government and the Muslim separatist movement. Actually, I was part of the, in the early 2000s, that's how old I am now, in the early 2000s, I was part of the negotiating panel that talked with the Muslim Islamic Liberation Group Front. Okay, so they created a Bangsamoro Autonomous Region for Muslim Mindanao, and these are all, they have powers over their territory, which is majority composed of Muslims. Okay, so that's the Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao. That's below the national government. That's the That's the highest local government unit in the Philippines. And if you separate the Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao, next to the office of the next to the national government now are the provinces. In the Philippines, we have, I think, 70 provinces. Okay, you have provinces also here, but of course not as big as, not as small as the Philippines. For example, we have where I come from Central Luzon. That's the middle of the northernmost island. We have, I think, 7 provinces there. So 7 provinces, okay? So, but there are more than 70 provinces in the Philippines now. So there's a province. Under the provinces are the smaller local government units, the cities or the municipalities, and the municipalities. The cities, actually there are 2 kinds of cities in the Philippines. Sorry, I did not put it here. There are 2 kinds of cities in the Philippines. You have the highly urbanized or chartered cities, such as Manila. These are cities that are not under the supervision of the province. Okay, they are independent from the provinces. Okay, but there are other cities that are under the supervision of the province. We call them the component cities. So there are 2 kinds of cities. The chartered cities are most of the time these are the highly urbanized or richer cities. Okay, so they can really act on their own. They're independent of the control of the provincial government or the provincial governor. But there are many cities which are under the provincial government. We call them the component cities. Okay, and under the province, under the cities, are the municipalities. Okay, you have municipalities also. Okay, headed by a mayor. The head of the provinces are called governors, and then you have the vice governor and the provincial council. The head of the cities are mayors, vice mayor, and the city councils. The head of the local government units of the municipalities are, of course, municipal mayor, and then the vice mayor and the council. And then at the lowest level of political unit are what we call as I told you earlier, the barangays, or these are the villages. There are 1,400 something uh, municipalities in the Philippines, there are, I think, something like 40,000 barangays in the Philippines. And right now, at this very hour, oh no, anymore. They're counting the votes now. It's 8 p.m. now. It's 8 o'clock in the evening now in the Philippines. They're counting the votes now for the different sets of officers of the barangays or the village councils. Okay, and they serve for a, I think 6 years. I'm not sure. I think 6. Okay. We go back to the terms of the tenure of the officials. The president and the vice president are elected for a 6-year term without re-election. The congressmen are, the senators are elected for 6-year term also for re-election, but they can be re-elected. The congressmen are elected for 3 years with 2 more re-elections. And so with the other local government officials, governors, mayors, they're elected for a term of 3 years, and then they can be re-elected for another 2 terms, for a total of 9 years, 9 consecutive years. Okay, so we have a barangay election now. Actually, they were supposed to have election every 6 years, but for this particular election, the last election was more than 6 years ago. Because of certain political events in the Philippines, they have to postpone the barangay elections. Okay, what about the different government agencies? They're appointed. The cabinet secretaries are appointed. The heads of the government-owned and controlled corporations are also appointed by the office of the president. Okay. I won't anymore dwell on because if you want me to deliver a talk on the local government units, it would take, as I told you earlier, it takes me 5 months to teach that course. Anyway, it's...
Thank you very much. You've described so many pressing issues. In fact, we found lots and lots of things which are in common. At the same time, lots of things which are different with the Russian administrative system. I'm sure students have lots of questions. Do you have any time to answer? Just 5
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you very much for your lecture, Dr. Tabunda. How do you assess the intensification of the formation of blocs, including military political ones, in the Asia-Pacific region? Thank you.
Sorry. How do I assess the what?
The intensification of the formation.
Okay. Of course, laws are passed depending on the needs of the times. If there is an urgent, if there's an urgent issue that needs to be addressed and there's no law that would cover it, then of course the policymakers, which are the lawmakers, would come up with laws. For example. For example, the laws or the policies that govern the overseas Filipino workers, or how we deal with our foreign partners. For example, there has been so much discussions, for example, on the conditions of Filipino workers in the Middle East. There's so much discrimination. Sometimes they get murdered. So we try to come up with, how do we address this now? This may be addressed to for example, the creation of the separate Department of Migrant Workers. That was created via a law. You cannot just create a department. There has to be a law that would say that, okay, we have to create a Department of Migrant Workers. So it has to depend, normally in lawmaking, this is true, depends on the pressing issues, okay? And if there is no enabling law or there is no body that would address that, then that's the time for the lawmakers to really come up with, with the appropriate law for that. But of course, how do you start the discussion of a law? In policy making, it depends. There are different streams. If you call that policy streams, it may come from a non-government organization that has advocacies, for example, for a particular issue, or it may come from the people themselves, right? Or it may come from the executive department. If the people in the executive departments feel that a certain law has to be created, has to be drafted, then they come up with discussions on that. And of course, the actual lawmaking would come from the from the House of Representatives and the Senate. The thing is, as in all other states, I think, where there is a vibrant lawmaking process, we call that the policy stream. The stream that would ignite, that would start the discussion for the adoption of a law would come from different sectors. So we call them stakeholders, stakeholder interest. It is in the interest, for example, of migrant workers, that their interests should be protected, and they air it in media. They air it. They talk to different lawmakers. They talk to different government officials, mass media, until the lawmaking channels get to them, and they start. That starts the process of lawmaking. Okay.
Thank you very much. More questions?
Okay. Yes.
I want to also thank you for your lecture. It was very educational, and you also talked about how Philippines has these courts for cases that involve Muslim and indigenous people. And as I understand, it is a practice that aims to respect and protect their religion and culture. And my question is whether it is effective, and do you think maybe it should be implemented among other countries as well, especially multicultural ones and secular states?
I would like to think that in terms of policy making, we are model to many other states. Mm-hmm. For example, for new countries in Asia, they would always get Filipino consultants to help them in crafting policies, and actually that would be a good practice for most other states, the Sharia courts and the indigenous peoples court, because we have to understand that these people have special interests, have special cultures, have special traditions that must be respected, and that's part of. I don't know how you accept the word. It's human rights, right? We ought to be judged. We ought to be treated according to our beliefs. As long as we don't do negative things that would negatively affect the society, then respect our tradition. That's the reason why the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region was created in the first place, because the Muslim Filipinos have different needs, have different cultures, have different practices, and these have to be respected. And they need a special government to address that need. Okay?
Thank you. Yeah, sure. I see there are lots and lots of other questions. So,
hello, thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting to learn more about your country, and I would like to ask you about such an important part of the policy is a soft power, and what soft power tools you think the Philippines uses to pursue its modern political goals? Thanks.
With regards to other countries, or?
As I understand, yes.
Yes, okay.
As I understand, so.
We always engage in diplomacy, yeah. And we're practical. I mean, with what China is doing right now, we cannot engage in a war with China. So we try to talk. We try to consult. It's really part of our foreign policy. You don't solve problems through wars. In the first place, Filipinos are not really into war. We're a very peaceful nation. Actually, it's both a strength and a weakness. Because some countries would see us, oh, these are very weak, they don't engage in wars. I mean, I think it's in our culture that as much as possible we talk. If you have problems with your neighbors, then you talk to your neighbors. That's very Asian. Actually, that's very Asian. And I understand China for that. China does not want an outside power to intervene in our affairs. Let's talk. We are both neighbors, then let's talk. You don't call the whole village to settle our issue. We're both neighbors. Okay, we just talk. And that's something very Asian. We call that soft power. We engage. We always engage. We always resort to diplomacy. of course, you could see that in our history, it took us more than 300 years before we froze against the Spaniards. See? But unfortunately, that's being taken care that's being taken advantage of by other powers. Oh, these people, they don't want war, so we just colonize them. Okay, yes, yes.
Thank you, Dr. Tabunda, for your lecture and answers. My question concerns the profession of international affairs expert. Is this profession in demand in your country, and what organizations or institutes do graduates of your university choose to work for? Thank you.
We have a Ministry of Foreign Affairs that handles our foreign concerns. And we have schools that actually teach international relations. Our school, New Era University, is one of those schools. Okay, so, but as it is now, I don't see many. It's, sometimes it's placed under the political science department of the universities. But there are not really very many schools that really teach international relations. Fortunately, we have one in the New Era University.
Thank you.
Okay.
And the last question goes to, but this student has already received her microphone, so she's winning the last word.
So at first, thank you, Dr. Tabunda, for your amazing lecture. I suggest that everyone in this audience enjoyed.
You did that fall asleep.
Yes,
okay.
and our teachers also really like it. So as for my questions, could you give us an evaluation of the future prospects for trade and economic cooperation between Russia and the Philippines, especially between Moscow and Manila?
We just signed a memorandum of agreement early this year between Moscow and Manila, right? There's so much to be made aware of. We don't know much about Russia, and Russia doesn't know much about the Philippines. So we begin with creating awareness. But if you want a quick answer, I think, especially with what's going on the economic crisis all over the world because of the high prices of oil, as a result of, your invasion of special military operation. I would like to see Russia selling oil to the Philippines. And that would be very acceptable to many Filipinos, because right now we have a very high inflation brought about by the high prices of oil. And immediately after February last year, your ambassador went to our president to discuss the possibility of Russia selling oil to the Philippines. And there had been very good discussions. Unfortunately, let's accept it. Somebody does not want the Philippines to buy oil from Russia.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Hope to see you again soon.